Welcome, everyone, to the Believe in Bengal podcast right here on Valley Sports Ohio. Yours truly, Solomon Wilcots, and right now we're joined by one of the favorites for this show. We got to go to him anytime we want to expand our horizons, and that is, of course, Paul Dehner Jr., the senior writer for The Athletic. Paul, I wish we were hanging out under better circumstances because after Monday, I'm telling you, it caught the entire town by surprise. The Bengals fall to the Texans 30-27, and a lot of uncharacteristic things happened in this game.
Yeah, there was. I mean, I think felt like they had figured out a lot of things defensively, where early in the season you saw them struggling against the run, and they really felt like they had kind of fixed that, and they were struggling with missed tackles, and they really felt like they had fixed that. And those showed up in a big way against the Texans, who had a ton of explosives. And one of the ways that they were still a little concerned was they're seeing so many guys had been getting explosive passes on them, and which is really uncharacteristic for Lou Anarumo defense. Not something that they had done. They never allowed more than 5 receptions of 20+ yards in a game all of last year. But yeah, this year they allowed 8 against San Francisco, 8 against Houston, and that's not including the 42-yard DPI on DJ Turner. That's right. 5 2 other times. It's kind of become, that's maybe the uncharacteristic trend that's really concerning there too. So all of that stuff added up to be in one of those days where you wonder what the heck just happened. This doesn't look right.
It also doesn't include the 20+ yard run by Devin Singletary. So in all, I counted 9 plays allowed over 20 yards or more. And then if you throw in the pass interference, which set up another score, you would have to say it's about 10. And that's so uncharacteristic. Also, what's uncharacteristic of a Lou Anarumo Cincinnati Bengals defense, they allowed 188 yards rushing on the day. You mentioned the poor tackling. Just the poor run fits. There were times when Devin Singletary ran outside, went untouched on a touchdown run. There was times when we blitzed. We had a free defender at point blank range in the backfield, and he made the defender miss. So these are things that we're not accustomed to seeing, and yet and still we got to take on the Baltimore Ravens on a short week, a team that, oh, by the way, runs the ball as well as any team in the league.
Yeah, and you saw that in week 2 here, and they did it. We talk a lot about the offensive side of wanting to play from ahead and how advantageous it was with their ability to really dictate the tempo of games, have longer drives, not have those 3 and outs early, which was really, the tenet of their 4-game win streak. Well, the flip side of that is what it does defensively. And you get behind like they did to the Texans. They scored in the first drive, but that long lull where they didn't do anything, the Texans take advantage of the game. They now were dictating the tempo. And that felt like early season defense where teams were just able to pound the rock on them. And they really haven't consistently had answers to that when other teams are playing from ahead. That's a concern. And this looked like that again. And so you wonder, okay, it can't go on like that where every game you have to be up by a certain amount of points to go and win, or else they're just going to run you to death. That's something that they need to get figured out as to why that's happened, because it's really been a common thread through all their losses is falling behind, and while behind, being unable to stop teams that kind of run it down their throat.
And even in some of the games that the Bengals have won, there seems to be these periods of lull when it comes to the offensive production. As you mentioned, they scored on the very first drive. And then the Houston Texans scored 20 unanswered points while the Cincinnati Bengals offense was in hibernation. They would punt some 5 times during that span until they got it going in the third quarter. And then uncharacteristically, we get 2 interceptions from Joe Burrow. So that negated the potential for more points on the board. But yet still, the Bengals still had a chance to win the game. I hate to bring up the drop by Tyler Boyd, who, as Joe Burrow said, they wouldn't have been down there without a 64-yard catch and run in the first place. What was the sense that you got from talking with the coaches today in the press conference, their ability to put their finger on some of the key moments of how this game got away from.
Yeah, I mean, that stretch of 5 drives that you mentioned, 4 of them 3 and outs, we know first downs in there, and it was the early downs there where they were just having unproductive first downs to put them behind the sticks and third and longs, and the Texans pass rush really giving their offensive line trouble. They've really felt like the offensive line settled in over the last month and the last couple of weeks, some pretty good fronts, San Francisco, Buffalo, and did a really nice job of keeping Joe comfortable. And that just wasn't the case with Houston. Houston was just beating them up in one-on-one matchups all day, to the point that Joe Burrow had to change his philosophy at halftime to come out and say, look, I have to go and I have to scramble more, I have to run more, I have to flush more in order to try to make plays happen, because he's just not going to be able to sit back there. They're not protecting well enough. That's a concern. But it hasn't been consistent for a while. So what happened there, hard to say specifically, but they look at those early downs where, whether it was a negative play from a sack or just a run that didn't open up a hole or whatever, just didn't get them to the point where they could get that first down going and get the drive some rhythm. And you had so much lack of any continuity or rhythm through that stretch that really changed the entire dynamic of the game. And that's how you end up with Joe Burrow playing in aggressive mode, playing in come from behind mode, having to take more risks. He was clearly taking a lot more risks, and maybe even too much so. But at a certain point, that's in your head as you're down 10. Like, you're just trying to make things happen. And so you throw a ball up the seam to Drew Sample that you wouldn't throw in that spot normally, or you throw the ball where he's throwing and didn't see the guy drop, trying to hit Trenton Irwin, and it gets picked off easily. You wouldn't throw that in any normal spot. But when you're in your head that you have to be aggressive, you have to go after and try to chase down this deficit, that's what ends up happening, and that's how you lose. And so much of it goes back to the dynamic of the game changing during that 5-drive stretch where they couldn't get anything going.
Playing smart football as a quarterback says that there are times when you don't risk a turnover. Punting is okay. But when you're down by 10, you're running out of time, you're getting close to the fourth quarter, punting's not okay when you've already done that 5 or 6 times earlier in the game. And so there are times, you talk to the best quarterbacks who've ever played in this league. I've had those conversations with Tom Brady, had those conversations with Peyton Manning. He said there are times when you have to risk it. When you know that if you give the ball back to that offense, by the time you get it back, they're going to have put more points on the board. And so he was trying to do his best to help the football team. There's no doubt about it. Help us to understand, on a short week before we go out to play the Ravens, what's going on with our health. I know T. Higgins battling hamstring injury. We saw Trey Hendrickson go down late in the ball game. Looks like he's got a knee injury. Very tough to bounce back on a short week. And we also know Jamar Chase is dealing with a back injury. We didn't have Sam Hubbard in this game, and then lost Cam Sample, his replacement as a starter, which I think really affected the way that we wanted to play defensively.
Yeah, we talked to Lou Anarumo today, and he said Sam Hubbard is irreplaceable, and he's maybe the best run-stopping edge defender in the league, and that's so valuable. And you saw it against Houston, and certainly you would see it against Baltimore. So him doesn't look, it's early, and they just kept repeating, short, tough week, so not making any declarations on these guys. There's obviously hope, but it makes it a lot harder on this Thursday. T. Higgins certainly seems unlikely. Trey Hendrickson seems unlikely if you're reading the tea leaves on those, and that Hubbard maybe less so, but time will tell. But it's tough. It's tough turning around that quickly, and there's a chance you're going to go there without both your edges. But here's the thing. They're going to be missing potentially both of their offensive tackles, and you have invested in this position and this depth on the defensive line in the draft. Joseph Osai, Miles Murphy, Cam Sample. These are all guys, Zach Carter on the inside. These are all guys that you've put high draft capital into. And at a certain point, those guys got to do it, and they got to go be players, and they got to go rise to the moment, or else, that exposes what your team is. But part of the reason why I think a lot of people liked this team, and I know why I liked the setup of this team from the beginning of the year was they felt built for the attrition, specifically on defense. The way they had backloaded the depth with so many quality draft picks in premium positions. And of those guys, DJ all the way down the line, DJ Turner, the guys I just mentioned too, Jordan Battle at safety. These are players that have to come through for you and have to develop into really quality players as the year goes on because of situations like this. Everyone's going to go through this. Everybody is going to battle this. The teams that survive into January are the ones that have the depth to plug in the next big star right behind them. And they have set it up, but it's got to carry out. Those draft picks have to be good players. They can't just be guys who were drafted high, and we're about to learn about them, I think, real soon.
And listen, Trenton Irwin, if Chase goes down, he stepped up last year. Higgins goes down. I think he stepped up in the game on Sunday against the Houston Texans. Tyler Boyd led the team in receiving. We know he's who he is and what he is going to be, more consistent. Look, my heart bleeds for him because he's a tough blue-collar guy. I expect him to bounce back big time. Even within a loss, Paul, there are these silver linings where I think you see young players grow. I think we saw DJ Turner grow. He made plays in this game, and he's beginning to do that more and more often. I don't know that we could say enough about what Cam Taylor-Britt has meant for this team, just like he did against Arizona. He turned the game around with a pick six. I thought he got us back in the game with a near pick six on Sunday against C.J. Stroud. He has a knack of baiting some of the best quarterbacks into throwing him the football, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's one thing to say, man, I mean, they just keep throwing the ball to him, but he's making it look like they can try to throw the ball around him, and he steps right into the play. This was a really, I think, important telling moment about where Cam Taylor-Britt is at in his career and his ascension to a real guy right now. And Lou Anarumo kind of said the same thing when I asked him about it, about the fact that Cam Taylor-Britt's interception came off the same play that he made a mistake on the previous drive, where he went behind Tank Dell on that little crossing route and realized then he played that wrong and should have played it better. And to instinctually make the adjustment on the next drive, see the same play happening, and in the moment undercut and know that's the best way to make the play and kind of bait CJ Stroud into trying to throw that in that spot. A guy who has been so, perfect with the ball, not a one interception on the year. He's not going to make that mistake. To see that adjust on the fly from drive to drive and have the athleticism then to pull that off shows that he's becoming a real, Pro Bowl, all pro type corners. That's an elite type in-game adjustment that you see from the best of the best. And for him to be hitting that stride in the middle of year two is a real sign of where he's at. You can, tell me all you want to about 4 picks in 5 games, and that's great, man. But the ability to make those kind of in-game adjustments and be understanding what you're seeing at that level makes such a huge difference, and that's kind of what's making him having a special year right now.
Zach Taylor, I think, understood what he was getting when they used the second-round pick on him. Obviously, he went to the University of Nebraska where Zach still keeps an eye on that program. But the thing that they share in common, as you well know, Cam Taylor-Britt was a quarterback in high school. He was a captain on the football team at the University of Nebraska. So here's a guy that's playing with a tremendously high IQ from a football standpoint, and his ability to bait quarterbacks, his ability to make these key plays at timely moments, I could share with you, it's no accident. And DJ Turner, and as you said, these guys are starting to make more plays, get more playing time, young guys, and we're going to need them to do that. Before we let you go, I got to ask you about these Baltimore Ravens, who, oh, by the way, gave up a game-winning field goal to the Cleveland Browns, Week 10. They fall at home 33-31. It was a game they have been leading the entire time, but you cannot sleep on this Ravens football team, Paul. They've scored 30-plus points in each of their last 4 games. So this is an offense that's still very potent that's going to be taking the field on Thursday night against the Bengals.
Yeah, when they brought in new offensive coordinator Todd Monken, you knew it would probably take a little bit of time to get everything going because they were changing a lot. I mean, they were going to focus more on Lamar throwing the ball in the pocket and utilizing a much better collection of skill players with the guys they added. Zay Flowers looks like a star pretty quickly. They obviously have Odell Beckham Jr., Rashad Bateman's healthy. They have more real guys there and have Lamar healthy. And you've seen that really blossom after they got that first month of reps in, and it's kind of unlocked it all for them. And they're a scary team right now. I don't, the one problem they've had is they've had some implosions late in games. I mean, that's the only way that they lose. I mean, they jump on people early, they get big leads, and occasionally they implode late. But outside of that, like, they have just been world beaters, and they've looked at times for long stretches of this season like maybe the best team in football. And they know the Bengals better than anybody. They play them as well as anybody, specifically from a defensive side of the ball, where they do such a great job of minimizing drives and tackling the checkdowns and keeping Burrow questioning the picture that he's showing with all the simulated pressures they do. And so it's this is a real big ask of the Bengals, but they need to be capable of big asks. And the losses that they had early in the season, this is where they hurt. Right. Is that, it's okay to lose to CJ Stroud on a heater every once in a while. It's okay to lose on a short week going on the road potentially to Baltimore because it's a really tough spot. Right. The problem is when you kick your margin for error into outer space in the first 4 weeks of the season for any number of injuries and any reasons, and the injury being clearly a big part of that, it really magnifies where you're at right now and how tough you've made this task for yourself. But this is the bed they've made right now, is they have to really find a way. If they still want to win the AFC North, the math gets real hard if you don't go win in Baltimore. To be down 2 games and a tie break to the Ravens and the way they're playing, as tough as this division is, as tough as the Bengals schedule is, it's a lot. This is one that I think really can kind of either keep the North title on the plate, or it feels like it can throw it to the dog for scraps.
Well, here's what we do know. The Baltimore Ravens, going all the way back to last season, they have lost 7 games when having a 14-point lead. They've allowed that many games to get away from last year up until what you saw week 10 Sunday against the Cleveland Browns, when both teams, Cincinnati Bengals and Baltimore Ravens, saw a 4-game losing streak come to an end. On Thursday night, they'll try to get back into the winning column. Paul Dehner Jr., senior writer for The Athletic. You're the best, my friend. Thanks for joining us on the show again.
Thanks, Sally. Appreciate it, man.
All right, we'll be back with more right here on the Believe in Bengal podcast, right here on Bally Sports Ohio. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Make sure you check out Bet Online for all of your sports betting needs. For anything that I do betting related, I go on over to betonline.ag and I use promo code BELIEVE50. BetOnline has all of the latest updated odds for the NFL and college football seasons. Anything you need, whether it's futures, live in-game betting, no matter what, your football betting needs are met at BetOnline. And again, make sure you use that promo code BELIEVE50, BLEAV50, to get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet Online, where the game starts.